In April 2021, four anonymous founders, hidden behind digital pseudonyms, launched from their Miami headquarters a collection of 10,000 drawings of bored monkeys. What seemed like a programmer's joke would become, in less than a year, one of the largest speculative phenomena in modern history. The Bored Ape Yacht Club was not just an NFT collection, it was the promise of entry into an exclusive club where the admission price cost more than a luxury home. Yuga Labs, the company behind the project, achieved something that few digital ventures have accomplished: transforming pixels into status symbols. Each monkey had unique characteristics generated by algorithm: hats, glasses, facial expressions, fur colors, combinations that, according to the creators, guaranteed rarity and exclusivity. But the true genius was not in the art. It was in the psychology behind the project. The founders, however, were not just programmers. They were masters of human psychology. They understood a fundamental truth about the nature of power and wealth. Wealthy people always seek unmistakable ways to demonstrate that they belong to a club that you cannot enter. And in an increasingly digital world, nothing was more ostentatious than owning an avatar that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The concept was simple, but revolutionary. Buying a bored ape was not just acquiring an image, it was buying an identity, a status, an entry ticket to a club where only the richest could participate. The timing was perfect. The pandemic had forced the world into the digital environment. Cryptocurrencies were at historic highs. Cheap money was circulating through the markets. And a generation of new millionaires, enriched with Bitcoin and tech stocks, were looking for new forms of investment and ostentation. The Bored Apes arrived at the exact moment when the world was ready to embrace the madness. What transformed monkey drawings into a global phenomenon was not blockchain technology. It was one of the most effective marketing campaigns in modern history. Yuga Labs' strategy was simple: make the right people buy the NFTs first. And the right people were celebrities with millions of followers. Justin Bieber was a central piece in this operation. In January 2022, the singer acquired Bored Ape number 3001. The price, 500 Ethereum. At the exchange rate of the time, the transaction was valued at a staggering $1.3 million. He immediately transformed the image into his Instagram profile picture, signaling to millions of followers. The effect was instantaneous. Millions of fans saw their idol flaunting his new digital monkey. The message, though unspoken, was clear. Status in the new digital world had a face, and it was the face of a bored ape. Neymar followed the same script, dispersing more than $1 million on a pair of digital monkeys. Paris Hilton, Jimmy Fallon, Madonna, Snoop Dogg. One by one, celebrities began adopting NFTs as status symbols. But there was something the public did not know. Many of these purchases were not spontaneous. They were part of a coordinated influencer marketing strategy. Yuga Labs had understood that, in the digital world, perception is reality. If people saw celebrities using bored apes, they would automatically assume that the NFTs had real value. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy fueled by FOMO, the fear of missing out. Each celebrity post generated waves of interest. Each high-value purchase validated the concept, and each validation attracted new buyers willing to pay increasingly higher prices. The result was an upward spiral of prices that defied any economic logic. Drawings that cost $200 at launch reached values of $500,000. The market capitalization of the collection exceeded $4 billion. But behind the glamour and headlines, a much darker reality was forming. To understand how the Bored Apes bubble formed, we need to analyze the psychology behind the phenomenon. The project was not selling art. It was selling hope, status, and the promise of easy profits. It was a toxic combination that created perfect conditions for one of the largest speculative bubbles of the digital era. The first ingredient was artificial scarcity. Only 10,000 bored apes existed, and this number would never increase. Yuga Labs had created a deflationary asset by design. The more people wanted to buy, the higher the price would be. It was basic economics applied to the digital world, but with a crucial difference. There was no intrinsic value behind the NFTs. The second ingredient was the gamification of investment. Owning a bored ape was not just having an image, it was having access to exclusive events, future launches, and a community of other wealthy owners. Yuga Labs had transformed speculation into a social game where the prize was peer recognition. The third ingredient was the illusion of democratization. Unlike traditional investments like art or real estate, anyone with a digital wallet could, theoretically, buy an NFT. This attracted a new generation of retail investors who saw in bored apes an opportunity to get rich quickly. But there was a fundamental problem that few noticed at the time. The value of NFTs depended entirely on other people's willingness to pay more for them. There was no revenue, no dividends, no tangible assets. It was a valuation scheme based purely on speculation. And like every speculative bubble, it only worked while new buyers kept coming. The first sign that something was wrong came in May 2022. The cryptocurrency market began to collapse, and with it, confidence in speculative digital assets. The average price of a bored ape, which had reached $300,000, began to fall. First slowly, then in free fall. The reality was brutal and mathematical. For prices to continue rising, new buyers needed to be willing to pay increasingly higher amounts. But when the crypto market collapsed, easy money dried up. And without new buyers, there was no one to sustain the inflated prices. Justin Bieber's $1 million illusion turned to digital dust. The ape he bought for $1.3 million saw its value plummet to less than $60,000. A loss of more than 95%. A personal financial collapse that, for him, was pocket change, but for others, was ruin. Neymar faced a similar situation. The $1 million monkeys were now worth a fraction of what he had paid. But celebrities could absorb these losses. The real problem was with retail investors. Thousands of ordinary people had used their savings, loans, and even mortgaged their homes to buy NFTs at the height of the bubble. They believed the promises that prices would only go up. They believed they were investing in the future of digital art. They believed they would be part of a technological revolution. But they discovered, in the worst possible way, that they had been victims of one of the largest speculative marketing campaigns in history. The collapse was not just financial. It was psychological. People who felt part of an exclusive community discovered they had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for images that anyone could copy with a right click. The promise of digital exclusivity had revealed itself to be an expensive and painful illusion. While investors counted their losses, a much larger shadow was forming in the corridors of the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The agency initiated a confidential investigation to answer a billion-dollar question. Were Yuga Labs NFTs, in fact, unregistered securities? If the answer was yes, the company would not have just made a marketing mistake, it would have committed a federal crime. The central question was complex, but fundamental. Were bored apes digital art or disguised investments? Yuga Labs had promoted NFTs as assets that would appreciate over time. They had created a roadmap of future developments. They had promised utilities and exclusive benefits. All these characteristics suggested that NFTs functioned more like investment securities than works of art. The Howey test, used by the SEC to determine if something is a security, examines 4 criteria: investment of money in a common enterprise with expectation of profits, derived from the efforts of others. Bored Apes seem to meet all these criteria. People invested money expecting profits based on Yuga Labs' efforts to develop the ecosystem. The investigation revealed questionable practices. Internal documents showed that the company knew many buyers saw NFTs as investments, not as art. Marketing campaigns emphasized appreciation potential. Influencers were paid to promote NFTs without adequately disclosing their commercial relationships with the company. Regulatory pressure intensified. Although the main investigation about the apes as securities continues open, the SEC delivered a first blow. The agency accused Yuga Labs not for the apes themselves, but for promoting other digital assets using celebrities, without revealing that these influencers were being paid. It was a public admission that the company's tactics were in the crosshairs of the law, resulting in a multi-million-dollar settlement. The message from the regulators was clear: the party was over. The story of the Bored Ape Yacht Club is more than the account of a speculative bubble. It is a case study on how sophisticated marketing, FOMO, and the promise of easy profits can create artificial value on a billion-dollar scale, and how that value can evaporate as quickly as it was created. Yuga Labs achieved something extraordinary. They convinced the world that monkey drawings were worth more than luxury cars. They did this by exploiting fundamental psychological vulnerabilities: the desire for status, the fear of missing out, the belief that technology always equals progress. But in the end, economic reality prevailed. Assets without intrinsic value cannot maintain inflated prices indefinitely. The real victims were not the celebrities who lost millions. They were ordinary people who believed in the promise of financial democratization through blockchain technology. Teachers, nurses, small business owners who saw in NFTs a chance to change their lives. Many lost not only money, but also confidence in the financial system and technological innovation. The SEC investigation established important precedents. It showed that regulatory authorities will not ignore speculative schemes just because they use new technology, and that companies cannot hide securities offerings behind technological jargon and influencer marketing. Today, most Bored Apes are worth less than 5% of their peak value. Yuga Labs continues operating, but under intense regulatory scrutiny. And the NFT market, which once moved billions, has shrunk dramatically. The bubble burst, but the lessons remain. In a world where technology and marketing can erect empires of artificial value overnight, the fundamental question, the same from all bubbles in history, echoes louder than ever. When the music stops, who is left standing to pay the bill? If you want more dossiers like this one, revealing the behind-the-scenes of the biggest corporate scandals, subscribe to the Dark Suits channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any analysis. Here, we uncover how power and money really work in corporate corridors.